The following is a GoPowerCat.com production.
It is another week of the Insiders, coming off a really nice win, 31-7 over Arizona. Kansas State prepares to head to BYU on Saturday for some late night action. Who doesn't like that? It's going to be Big 12 After Dark. It kicks off 9:30 p.m. Central, and Ryan Gilbert and I will be there. And Ryan Gilbert needs to remind me on Saturday to take a nap because I'm old.
You betcha. I gotcha.
You get. Welcome to the Insiders. It's Fitz and Hanley and Gills and Coles, and today's media guest is Caroline Sorrow from 27 Sports in Topeka. Thank you, my dear, for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Okay, so two of us weren't at the game. Two of us were at the game, but we were in the press box, and you were on the field.
Right.
So give me your observations of that atmosphere on Friday night.
Well, let me just say it was electric. And I have to throw in there that I've only covered one other K-State football game before this Friday because I was not on the sports team this time last year. So that was really my first exposure to the full experience. I wasn't able to be at the full game the last time I was there, and I thought it was awesome. I mean, I did a live shot for our 6:00 show, kind of in the upper deck a little bit pregame, and there were tons and tons of people that were just like so juiced walking past. Everybody was so excited, and the energy down there was awesome. Maybe Harley Day added to it a little bit. All the motorcycles coming in, that was pretty cool. But there were a ton of, women's basketball players were there too. Like it was just seemed like an all around, really, really fun day. And I feel like people really ate up the top 25 matchup.
Okay, so for full disclosure, you went to a university in the state of Kansas that is not purple, but that doesn't matter. However, since this was your first exposure to Harley Day, give me your honest opinion because I'm torn about it.
I thought it was loud. That was my first thought. It was loud. I thought it was fun though. I mean, it's pretty cool. I got some great video. So I thought it was nice. I mean, chance for people to come show off their motorcycles. Why not? So. Yep. I thought it was cool. It was a nice fun. Willie had his, whole leather gear. He was decked out, so that was a nice addition.
Yep, like Ryan Gilbert, he was in all leather in the press box. It was kind of weird.
So
did you drive to Harley? And he goes, "No, I just the way leather feels." It was weird.
Caroline got a great video though. That interception, the crowd pop was amazing on that video.
Yeah, I retweeted that. That was incredible.
It was a little too loud on my camera. I need to turn it. I need to be prepared for how loud it's going to be next time. I should have had my mic turned down a little bit.
Guys, real quick, what do you guys think of Harley Day? I think it's
well, we know what Gills is going to say. Gills doesn't like alternate uniforms. He doesn't like anything fun. So we already know what Ryan Gilbert's going to say. I personally absolutely love it. It's my favorite thing that K-State does. I think it's really cool. Well, I mean, like pregame tradition wise, like, is it better than Fort Riley Day? Is it better than, some of the other, pregame festivities they have? I don't know, but I think it's one of the best. I love Harley Day. And you know what? Usually I subscribe to the mantra, if you're going to flex your motorcycle in front of me, then you're maybe compensating for something. But not when it's Harley Day. Take that thing out, drive it around, and show it off. It just adds to the atmosphere. And I can only imagine what Arizona fans thought when they saw a bunch of motorcycles. If that doesn't scream, we're in the middle of the Midwest. Welcome to the Big 12. I don't know what does. I thought, obviously, unfortunately, I wasn't there this year, but Harley Day is one of my favorite things to be at.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. And I'm a guy that has always wanted a Harley, but I'll never buy a motorcycle because I don't trust other human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, look, someone's going to just do something stupid in their car and kill the person on the motorcycle. But I was walking by those, checking them out. Man, there were some sweet vintage looking ones that were amazing. But this was a vintage looking K-State victory too. They, started off the 7-7 tie at the end of the first quarter. Arizona just goes right down the field and scores on the opening possession. And that was it. I've seen that script before. It's been a while, but they come out, they're on their script offensively and get down the field. And then K-State's defense just turns it off. And Brian Hanley, that was an impressive defensive performance after that first drive.
Yeah, it was almost like Arizona scripted the first drive and then had no idea what the hell they were doing the rest of the game. I'm like, what's going on here? You don't go back to anything that works. But having said all that, K-State made some adjustments and just didn't let the stuff work. On the first drive, we kept seeing, runners bounce outside. Guys weren't holding contain. And it was driving me mad. It was driving a lot of people mad. It's like, come on now. What are we doing here? And then K-State made some adjustments and just didn't allow those runs to the outside anymore. But another thing that they did was they said, look, we get it. You got one of the best receivers, if not the best receiver in the country. He's going to get his yards, but nobody else is going to do anything. And we're not going to let any of that happen. I know they got some late when the game was already over, but they didn't let anything like that happen the rest of the game. K-State's defense stepped up, played physical. That's the one thing that they did is they played physical. I said it going in. I wasn't sure that Arizona was going to be able to handle that, and they couldn't. They just flat out couldn't.
Okay. Ryan Gilbert, how much impact did the punt return have?
That was huge, man. I mean, Kansas State kind of needed to play like that against Tulane with the scoop and score. And that was sort of it. Obviously happened a lot earlier, of course, against Arizona, but that's the type of play that I think this team kind of needs to get itself going now, moving forward now against BYU and really, any other game. Maybe you don't have to have that and they can come out firing from the get-go. And don't get me wrong, offensively, K-State was fine, but on defense, it took a little while for them to set in. But, guys, I was rather pessimistic about this game just because of the question marks. Can Avery Johnson play better? Can the defense fix those issues in the secondary? The wideouts getting involved. Obviously, there's still some question marks here and there, but I'm happy to be, proven wrong. I just needed to see some change from that Tulane game, and we certainly saw it against Arizona. Now, obviously, like I said, K-State can still get better, but certainly a step in the right direction. So it's about, we'll talk about the betting lines here throughout the week, but it's the exact same point spread, about a touchdown or 8 points. So either that says Arizona or BYU, one of those teams is better or worse than we thought. Who knows? But, Big B, you talk about the Big 12 here on your channel, right? Like maybe Arizona's just not that good. Not to take anything away from what Kansas State did, because McMillan and Fafita are certainly great players, but maybe top to bottom, that roster maybe just isn't as good as we thought.
Caroline, what did you see on that Dylan Edwards punt return, and how quickly that developed from a field angle?
Yeah, well, it was, I think quick is a great way to describe it. I was on the end zone where he was running at me. So he was coming right at me. And the first thing I thought was wheels. Like the kid was cooking, and he had quite a bit of help too. I mean, the guys that were out there, the blocking was incredible. He had a lane, he had all the room in the world to run. And I think the coolest part about that whole, few moments for me watching wasn't necessarily the punt return itself, but it was the moment that he and Chris Kleiman had right afterwards. And the relationship between those two has been talked about quite a bit, now with Dylan joining the team and everything. But it was really cool. You could tell like the genuine, Kleiman grabbed his helmet and, they was jumping around with him. And so it was really cool. It was quick though. I feel like we haven't seen, just because he hasn't had the opportunity to have as many carries, maybe as people thought he was going to. I feel like we haven't seen him really been able to get out in open space like that. And that was the first time. And I think it was like, okay, here's what he can do when he's got room. So it was crazy to watch how quick he got from end to end on that.
Incredible. And by the way, that moment with Dylan and Coach Kleiman is the photo I used to promote tonight's show.
Nice.
It'll be the front page image because it is really cool. Chris Kleiman celebrates with players just like he's as happy as they are. He's just having a blast down there. But Cole Carmody, you have probably watched that play a number of times on replay because you were coaching Friday night. I knew Dylan Edwards was fast. But, dude, that looked like someone sped up the film. His legs were going so fast they became a blur.
Yeah.
I don't understand. As an incredibly, painfully, awfully slow human being, how does that happen? He was just flying.
My favorite part of that whole play, watching it on TV, is our beloved play-by-play analyst from Fox, Tim Brando, with absolutely one of the – I don't know if it was – one of the worst call I've ever heard of a punt return, but it might be close. He says, "And here he comes, and there he goes." And that's literally what it was. I mean, like, I can't even fault him for that because, oh, here he comes. Oh, he's gone already. Like, I mean, he was absolutely flying. And a funny story, guys, and you mentioned it. I didn't watch the game live, which is the first time I haven't watched a K-State game live since 2018. A long time for me, but we have, I want to say, 4 or 5 K-State alumni on our coaching staff. And the game that I was coaching was not going in our favor. But now with the power of technology, we carry computers in our pocket. And so at halftime of our game, I pulled out my phone and I looked at the score. And I said, hey, K-State's winning 14-7. Dylan Edwards has a punt return. And naturally, all 4 of the other alumni came over. Well, I want to see it. And here we are at halftime, supposed to be making adjustments. And everybody has the same reaction. It's just like, this kid is just special. He's just different, guys. Like, I know we said that about Deuce Vaughn, and we've said that about some other K-State football players in the past, but like the way that he's able to be an immediate impact, and every time he touches the ball, he has a chance to score a touchdown. And that is not a common thing to have happen, in this day and age in football, where you are just so fast that it doesn't matter where you touch the ball. It doesn't matter who's around you. If you break one tackle, you might be gone. And guys, the craziest part about that is his teammate and his quarterback is the exact same way. I know we're going to get into Avery running the football, but man, I watched that game on Saturday morning, and like I was sitting there, I just couldn't believe how fast both number 2 and number 3 looked, because I mean, they were literally outrunning defenders. And the only reason they got stopped was because they went out of bounds, because they ran out of room. But they were literally running by guys, and you just don't see that from those positions in this day and age in football.
I take it the halftime adjustments were made.
Well, we ended up beating them from the second half on, but it was
just not focused.
Yeah, it's coach's fault, obviously.
Later on, Go Powercat, digging into Cole Carmody's coaching career and how he's destroying his alma mater.
Yep.
Hey, Carolyn, you're down on the field. Give me your thoughts on. Well, first of all, Avery Johnson's got to be kind of a trip to try to follow with a camera. He's a little bit everywhere. Your first time you really get to see him up close. What did you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it started. I feel like it started off maybe a little slow. But like you said, it is hard to follow him around. I mean, you never know kind of which way he's going to go, and having him and DJ back there as well. It's like the combo of like, okay, the only thing I'm focused on in my brain is where's the ball. And that's the only thing that I'm looking at. But I feel like his ability, I feel like all the time, the thing that comes with him is talking about his ability to run. Is he going to throw the ball? Okay, no, he's going to tuck it and run, whatever. But his ability to do both and do both really well is really impressive to me. And I think his ability to tuck and run the ball so well, which maybe he did a little bit more of that on Friday than he has done in the last 2 games, really opened up a lot of those major pass plays as well. And so it really, they complement each other. And I feel like you can kind of tell he's starting to get more comfortable because, you can see some of that decision-making going on, and some of the less deer in the headlights look a little bit. You can kind of see the comfortability setting in. And he talked about that, earlier today as well, feeling like every single game it's getting a little bit farther there. And the other thing to think about as well is this is his 4th true start, really. Like, if you count the bowl game from last year, it's like, okay, this is going on with the kid that's 19, and his 4th true start. I mean, the ceiling is really high, and it appears that he's getting better and better, not just from, a making decision standpoint and what he's actually physically doing, but from a comfortability and having command of the offense. And you can feel that too.
It was a big leap forward for him. He'd been okay. And this game, he was pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought he was great. Some of the things that we wanted to see the offense do as a whole, they were able to do, spread things out a little bit, throw the football a little bit more. We saw some different formations. We saw him run the football a lot. Not all of them planned, but he still ran the football. And those are just things that are going to have to happen for Kansas State to succeed. When he doesn't run the football, when the opportunity presents itself, then we're not doing ourselves justice. And I know he understands that. The one thing about it is he says it. He's like, look, sometimes I just can't take the extra yard, but still run the football. Well, that's somebody that understands exactly what's going on. Hey, it's more important to go to the next play and take care of myself than to get the extra yard. We'll come back and fight another day. Well, that's somebody that gets it. But having said all of that, you got to go and take the yard, not the extra yard, but go get the yards. And I think that was part of it. K-State opened it up a lot. I was excited to see, but I still say this. I said it right after the game. Fitz, I think we've still only seen maybe 40 to 45% of what this offense can do. I don't think that we're anywhere close right now to everything that they can unpack on this offense and on this season. So I think we're still a long way to go when it comes to that.
Fitz, can I jump in real quick?
Please do.
Talk about Avery, because this is, to me, maybe the most interesting part about this. And I think something that fans forget sometimes is that in today's age of college football, players are older and older, and they're older than they ever have been. I mean, seriously, guys, I saw a stat on Twitter today. I pulled up on my phone. Utah plays Oklahoma State on Saturday, and what's widely considered, maybe a potential winner goes to the Big 12 championship type of game. And their quarterback for Utah expected, we'll see if he plays, Cam Rising. And I guess I didn't realize this, but Cam Rising is in his 7th year of college. He is 25 years old. He was in the class of 2018. That's when I graduated high school. Alan Bowman, who we all know his story, he's also extremely old. He was also in the class of 2018 in his 7th year. So let's think about this for a second, guys. Both of these two guys, I think fans would probably consider in the upper half, if not the top 5, 6 quarterbacks in the conference. Avery Johnson, I think after Saturday kind of cemented himself in that upper echelon of top quarterbacks. Guys, when Avery Johnson was in 8th grade, Cam Rising and Alan Bowman were freshmen in college. That's just crazy to me. And maybe that says more about Cam Rising and Alan Bowman, but these are the kind of players that, that these younger guys that are contributing for K-State, because it's not just Avery, but there are offensive linemen who are in their 5th, 6th, some of them 7th years. And, Keenan Garber is in his 6th year of college. So it's not like K-State doesn't have those players. But I think to put it in perspective, Alan Bowman makes mistakes. Cam Rising makes mistakes. And so for people to expect Avery Johnson to not make any mistakes, being that young, he's going to make mistakes. But you didn't see that on Saturday. And I think that's what was so promising, is because he's doing this, and you can see the growth from a 19-year-old kid from a week-to-week standpoint.
I'll butt in here, Fitz, real quick with Avery Johnson while we're on the subject. I think we're all this is the Avery Johnson Roundtable. People have to remember that he is a 19-year-old man or kid. And, we are maybe frustrated with the play calling early on, not opening up the playbook, and not going to run away from that. I still thought K-State early on could have been more aggressive to start the season. That being said, though, you don't want to just throw everything on his plate all at once. You have to kind of gradually give him more and more things, get him comfortable. You got to, learn how to crawl before you can walk, so to speak. And so that's, I still think K-State could be more aggressive, but you have to keep that in mind. Like Big B's saying, the whole playbook hasn't been shown yet, but that's for a reason. If this was, Skylar Thompson in his 5th year or whatever, the offense is going to be further along than it is. But with Avery Johnson, who's so young, you've got many new pieces, a co-offensive coordinator stepping in. I think that's something we got to keep in mind that we haven't talked about enough, is that Avery Johnson is still very young. The offense, as a whole, is still very young as well.
And Gills, he got the final word with me, didn't he? Post game when he walked in.
He has no idea what you're talking about, but I saw your tweet, so I do understand what you're talking about. Fitz Gilbert is just not ever pay attention to anything.
This went right over my head. Whatever joke you're making.
I'm not making a joke. I criticized him or asked him a hard question on Monday last week, and he came in and asked me, what do you think of that?
Yeah. We love a good quarterback with humor, though, right?
Yeah.
And real quick here with basketball, man, Jerome Tang echoes the same exact thought. He always mentions that it's not about peaking early on in a season. It's about playing your best basketball in March. Now, obviously, in football, you have to kind of win most of your games in order to get to the playoff. But still, I think the coaching staff here for football is kind of viewing that the same way. Fitz's best friend Avery Johnson is viewing that the same way.
It's the hair. I need Avery hair. Caroline, should we make Avery hair that you and I can profit from this kid? A little NIL action, make the hair and sell it. Big B, you look fantastic with it.
Hey, why not? Let's do it. You started something.
What do you have? Where's KU got next week? Are they off? I can't even remember.
No, they have Morgantown. Yeah.
Oh, they're Morgantown. That's right. So no home games for you guys to cover. You go from 2 on a Friday night to nothing?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. We had that last week too. We had 2 home games the week before, and then last Saturday we were off the hook, so to speak. So kind of weird the way it lines up, but I'm okay with it. So
yeah, I bet you are. I bet you are. Also, going back to that crowd thing, Caroline, it was just sustained. They didn't run out of gas. I mean, even when K-State's up by 3 touchdowns in the second half, in the fourth quarter, the students are still there yelling their faces off. It was, I couldn't do that. I'd have a headache by halftime.
Those students have they got a different kind of stamina. I can't do that anymore. I'm too old now. But yeah, they were in there the entire time. I mean, it didn't really look like, seats started clearing or anything, even though they were up so big at the end. It's pretty cool. Like, there's a lot of excitement around this team always, I feel like, but especially right now. I don't know why that is. Maybe the Avery Johnson thing, something, but
Cole, what was it about this game that had people so revved up? It's a non-conference game, so it wasn't like the start of the conference schedule. Yeah, it's on Friday night, Fox Friday. That was kind of cool, but people complained about that. And yet the crowd was as good as it's been in a very long while at Bill Snyder Family Stadium.
I know it doesn't make good YouTube or radio or podcasting to say, I don't know, but like, I'm kind of stumped on that one, Fitz. Like, here's my take. And, being around Kansas City my whole life, you've seen a lot of sports and you've seen a lot of pretty good athletes, whether it be Bobby Wood Jr. for the Royals, if it's Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs. And the day that Patrick Mahomes came to the Chiefs and put up all those big numbers in LA, when they came back and played the San Francisco 49ers, the energy in that building was just different because everybody came to watch number 15. They wanted to see what he would do next. I mean, there's that famous clip of him playing golf in Vegas, and he says, I make good TV. That's what I do. And you know what? It kind of feels like every time number 2 touches the ball, people will hold their breath because they're like, oh, what's he going to do next? It honestly, Fitz, it reminded me of watching Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson on senior night against Oklahoma, because you were just holding your breath, waiting to see the lobs, waiting for Desi Sills to come out of nowhere and pin a shot against the backboard, like you're just waiting for those guys to make a gigantic play. And it kind of feels like people show up now to watch number 2. And I think that's probably why there's some scrutiny about the offense, is because people are just excited. You know what?
No.
I firmly believe that if Will Howard was the quarterback of this team, the attendance would be the exact same. But I don't know if the energy around the program would be the same, because there's this new shiny toy that you can just see has loads of potential, and it is a literal star shining in your face and growing before you. And I feel like that's why there's this renewed energy around the program, Fitz. And it's not just the crowd. It's not just the team. It's everyone in that building who can see the potential and they can see the path, throw in the 12-team playoff. And people around that building and the fan base actually feel like K-State has a chance to make a lot of noise. And I truly believe that that's where all this energy is coming from.
It's pretty cool. Big B, we wanted them to open up the offense, put Dylan and DJ Giddens on the field with Avery. They did that on the first drive. They scored. They went back to it in the third quarter, drove the length of the field, and scored. And I believe that's the only times they did it, because that kind of indicates what you said. They're holding stuff back still. But boy, that alignment of those 3 weapons on the field together, plus the tight ends and plus a receiver or 2, that stresses the defense. And I don't know how defenses in the Big 12 are going to handle that.
I mean, look, I'm waiting, Fitz, when they line them both up in the backfield. Avery claps his hand, and then they both go line up, split out. I mean, there's so many different things that they're just going to be able to do. You just can't prepare for all of it. You literally. And again, in the Big 12, if you haven't seen any of it, then what do you do? You know, it's just like they've got so much that they can tap into here. And you're right. We didn't see it that often in this game, but quite frankly, we didn't have to. And I think that was part of it. I think once they finally got into a groove in the second half, I think it was one of those things, okay, we got this figured out. We got them on the run, and there's not anything that they can really do to slow us down. And if you don't have to open up your entire playbook to go win a football game, you're just not going to do that. And they didn't. So good for them. But, yeah, you're right. Too much to have to deal with, man, moving forward, and just getting that little glimpse that teams are going to have to prepare. Like, what's BYU thinking this weekend? What are they thinking preparing? Like, okay, what are we going to prepare for? What are they going to do? What are they going to see? It'll drive defensive coordinators bonkers.
What I love
Forget
about
go ahead, Fitz.
Go ahead.
Are you sure? Okay. Just forget about the decoy stuff, and like you have a finite number of skill position players that you can have on the field at the same time, right? K-State's wideouts have underperformed. Garrett Oakley hasn't been what we thought he was going to be this year. I know, I'm not trying to knock on Keenan Johnson or anybody that, Braden Lofton, Will Swanson, they both have 2 touchdowns on the year. You can get those guys on the field, but Edwards and Giddens are without a doubt. I mean, they're probably your top 2 at this point in time. So to not have them on the field is it's not smart. Now, obviously, we want them to be there for decoys at the least, sure, but those guys are playing so much better than Dante Cephas, right? So, I'm not saying to just, have that be your whole game plan, but they need to be on the field because they are easily your best skill position players right now. And not to mention that DJ and Dylan can both do a lot of damage through the air as well.
I'm gonna not necessarily disagree with you, Gilbert, but there is something to be said for the reason why your guys have been so successful is because they've been fresh. And specifically talking about this game in Provo, I know that Chris Kleiman mentioned the altitude, but I do kind of wonder how often we're going to see DJ and Dylan on the field at the same time, because you want to make sure that both guys are fresh. And so if you play both of those guys the entire night, they probably lose a little bit of their effectiveness. I mean, that's just human nature. And so I'd be curious to see, because normally I would agree with you, but this week I think it might be, and even in Boulder, quite honestly, it might be just a touch different, because I want to see how much the altitude actually affects these guys before I'm ready to say, let's play them both and see what happens.
Are you worried about the altitude and me?
I am. I mean, and you have to sit in the press box, Fitz, like, that's
even higher than the field.
Higher up. Like, I don't know how many stairs they have up there in Provo in that press box, but
do you guys think we make it up to the press box from the parking lot, or does Fitz just pass out on the way there?
Man, that's not right. That's not right.
Fair question.
I don't want to talk about it because you are right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to going to Provo. Gills, I mentioned this in my Power Talk. I hear they give out free ice cream to visitors.
Okay.
That's like a highlight for me. I get free ice cream. Like, they just give it to you. I think they make you eat it too. It gets weird, but
okay.
It's okay. I'm all in on that.
I'm here for it. Yeah.
Kellen, one of the things that I love about this team is we're talking about Kansas kids, and you had Desmond Purnell on from Wichita, from Topeka on your game wrap on 27. It's really cool. It just really is. I mean, all 3 of those kids we're raving about are Kansas products. Des is, Austin Moore is. There's so many, but Hadley Pans are on and on and on. It's fun to cover this team from that standpoint because you know where they're from, and you haven't been around here long enough, but maybe when your time in school, you know exactly where they played, and you know what, you might have covered some of those teams.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's getting to that point a little bit, now that I've been in this job for, coming up on 2.5 years now, even though I haven't been sports the whole time. I've been doing, Friday Night Light stuff, the last 2 falls. And it's getting to that point where it's like, oh, these are names that I, remember reading on a high school roster sheet, your Calambardas and those kids that are freshmen this year. It's like, oh, we read their highlights, 8 months ago, whatever. So it's just kind of cool to see that. And you brought up Desmond Purnell, but I was asking him about that too. He's a Hayden kid here from Topeka. And I just asked, I was like, how cool is it? And it's such a simple question, but it is cool. I mean, it's a team that's, an hour down the road from where he grew up. And he had a great answer. He was like, it's everything I've ever dreamed of. He said his mom and his dad and his aunt come to almost every game. His dad sometimes isn't at all of them, but his mom, I think, is pretty much at all of them. And I think she's about as excited as everybody that was in there on Friday night for him too.
He's such a great K-State story.
He's awesome, yeah.
He gets pushed into duty in 2022 when Khalid Duke goes down, and we're all like, okay, what's going to go on here? Because we didn't know anything about him.
Right.
And he wasn't a highly rated recruit. And honestly, he filled out before last season. He wasn't that big to play a linebacker. And he just slowly gets better through the season. And now Cole, he's as good as any linebacker in the Big 12. I'll take him.
Yeah, he is. I remember that game, Fitz, and that was the horrible 10-3 game where, I mean, it just felt like that was the hardest, ugliest, most horrific football that you've ever seen. And Khalid Duke gets hurt in the first quarter. And at that point, he was playing really good football. I want to say maybe he was like conference player of the week before. And they had just moved him outside linebacker. People are all fired up. He's playing really good. He's looking like a pro. And then he gets hurt. And we're up in the press box and we're like, who's his backup? Like, who is his backup? And here comes Desmond Purnell. And I remember walking down the tunnel because at Iowa State, it's just horrific. You got to go on the concourse and then all the way down. And I remember talking with you, Fitz, and I was like, man, like Desmond Purnell, like I was really impressed with him. Like he looked pretty good. Like he might be pretty good in the next few years. And Fitz was like, well, if he's playing, like K-State's in a world of trouble. There's no way that kid is going to play significant snaps at K-State. And I kind of think we all kind of had that sentiment. Yeah. And then last year, here he comes and he just looks like a dude. And now he looks like one of the best linebackers in the Big 12. Fits in between him and Austin Romaine and then Steady Eddie Austin Moore. I mean, I could not be more pleased with this linebacking core because you are seeing the fruits of the labor that this staff has put in. And it is impressive because all three of those guys are absolute studs. They're playing at all conference levels, and they're really leading this defense.
We're over 1,000 viewers right now, 32 minutes into the live. If you got any questions, drop them over there in the chat. Help out your host. I'm inherently lazy, and I don't want to think this much. That's just the honest truth. And now I'm going to ask Ryan Gilbert to speak about something so I don't have to. And by the way, make sure you're subscribing to this channel and following along over at Go PowerCat also. Gills, we'd love to talk about the offense and special teams, but boy, that defense was good. They just really got after it after that first drive.
That's all you have for me is defense. That's it. That's as creative as you could get, Fitz.
Desmond
Purnell. Speak of the devil, I was gonna mention that Wally. Shout out to Ryan Wallace. He sent me and Zach Carlson out. It was like one of the first times I went out for a recruiting trip to go interview a recruit. And I remember me and Zach were like, we're really going all the way out to Topeka for. I mean, Desmond Purnell's offer list was very, very short, right? So Wally, though, I mean, Ryan Wallace knows his stuff. He definitely saw something there, and soon after, obviously, K-State's coaches certainly pulled the trigger there. But yeah, I mean, the defense, man, if you take away that first drive against Arizona, I mean, is insane. And obviously, that first drive, though, I mean, I think the resiliency is probably the most, and I don't think resiliency is the right word because we talked with players today, Coach, and Coach today, Fitz. They didn't necessarily seem to have hit the panic button after that first drive. They kind of just stayed true to what their game plan was. They didn't panic, right? So I don't know if resilient is the right word, but they just, they stayed calm. And McMillan, I think they knew that he was probably going to have his at some point in the game, but by and large, man, they were nails. They were locked down. And like you talked about earlier, that punt return, I think was huge for that defense to have some weight lifted off of its shoulders and play more freely.
Fitz, can I ask Big B an offensive line question?
Bring it on.
Okay, Big B. So I when I was watching this game, a few things hit me. And the first thing that hit me when it was about Dylan Edwards is his ability to kind of hide behind the offensive lineman. As an offensive lineman, when you know that you got a guy back there, I mean, the same thing can be said for Deuce Vaughn, to where the defender now is not only having to try and stay gap sound and get by you, but also find the running back. I mean, surely that makes it harder on a defender. So that's number one. But his ability to get through the hole, and we were talking about it on last week's show, his ability to get north and south. I mean, I feel like what he does kind of not protects an offensive lineman, but it makes an offensive lineman's job a little bit more simpler because, you know, instead of worrying about, hey, I've got to make sure that I get this guy and then get to the next level, they can focus on making their block. And because he hits the hole so hard, you're not always going to have time to get to the second level because Dylan Edwards just might be gone.
Yep.
Well, I mean, second level blocking type of stuff is, I mean, look, at this level of football, it's tough to get there because defensive linemen are too big, too fast, too strong. You're not always going to be able to get to the second level, especially if you're double teaming guys. That just makes it more difficult. That's why linebackers run so fast and all that. That's why K-State linebackers are so good, is because they scrape across. They can diagnose exactly what they see so quickly. But as far as, you know, him hiding, absolutely it helps because if you can't see him, it's hard to tackle something you can't see, you know. And if they're short guys, they're hiding behind us. Yeah, I mean, not to mention defender's job is a lot more harder than an offensive lineman's job. Yeah. We're trying to block you. You have to, number one, diagnose where the ball's going, go through a guy that's trying to keep you away from it and go around and then tackle somebody. I mean, that's difficult. And if you can't find the person to tackle and even if it's just a split second trying to find the ball, well, that split second might allow that offensive lineman to get his hand in better position, to get his feet in better position. And then that split second, oh, by the way, you're blocked. And I don't care if you know where the ball's going or not, you can't get there because you're blocked. I'm in front of it and the running back's gone. So, yes, all of it helps, every bit of it.
Big B, Keenan Garber had a game at Tulane to forget. He wasn't good.
Right.
And then on the second drive, a second possession of Arizona, they punt. Dylan Edwards takes it back. They get the ball back. They start to drive the field again with the potential of tying up the game. It looked like the seam pattern was right there. And Keenan Garber comes flying out of nowhere. I still am amazed that he had to react instantly to that ball being cut loose. It made a huge play that pretty much put the game away. Not maybe in points, but mentally, I think it finished off the other Wildcats. Keenan Garber, another Kansas kid, Lawrence kid, fantastic play, significant. And how far this kid's come since switching to cornerback is absolutely amazing.
Well, it's football instincts, you know, it's just understanding what you're being taught. When you're not being pressured and then the ball goes in a different direction, just run to the football. You know, if somebody's running up the sideline with him, obviously he's going to be covering his guy and nobody's pressuring him over there. Just go make a play on the football, because I'll tell you what, if he doesn't make a play on the football, it's a touchdown. Yeah, because nobody was going to get there. So It's kind of my thinking that, yeah, they had been taught that, understand what you've been taught, trust your eyes. And a lot of times that's difficult for college kids to understand. Just trust your eyes. You see it, go react to it. Forget all the other stuff. Just go react to what you actually see. And he did that. Made a great play. Like you said, Fitz, the week before, you know what? Not good. It just wasn't good. But he's a better football player than that. He knows he's a better football player than that. Sometimes you play bad. It's okay. Yeah. I mean, I'll take that back. It's not necessarily okay, but you play bad. Everybody can't play the best of up to their abilities every single week. It's just not humanly possible. Well, he played good this game. That's all I know. And that's all that matters. He I don't even know if you want to say that he made up for it. I just know that he had a better football game, and that's good for him, and that's good for K-State moving forward.
Finally, Toon's got some really good comments over here. I like this one a lot. What's happening to Ryan's head? Gills, are you having another bad
I'm
hair
repping
day?
the black
Oh.
and yellow. is
Oh,
what's going
no.
on, actually.
That's it. That's it, people. That's it.
Caroline, do you have a NFL team?
I do. Vikings.
Whoa, yeah, that's right. I just heard that. Where are you from originally?
I'm from Denver. It's the Vikings thing's a long, long story. We blame my dad for that one, but
So Denver, Lawrence, and Minnesota, and now Topeka. Okay, it adds up. Sure.
I said it was a long story.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. Here's the other one from Finally Tuned. He thinks you might be in witness protection. I would tend to think that doing nightly television and having a podcast as a host on YouTube would be bad moves in witness protection. But there's a chance Caroline has turned on the mob. I'm just going to say that she could
bring
be
my light next time.
she could be. I kind of keep going back to this, but as Caroline, as you were down on the field, just give me some of your impressions, because I don't get to talk to people who are kind of experiencing it for the first time that often, but whether they're team related, crowd related, anything, this is going to be a fun football team for you guys to cover, and just kind of sum up your thoughts.
Yeah. No, it's really cool being down there kind of on the same level. You see a lot of things that you don't see when you're up in the box. It's kind of similar to sitting courtside, at a basketball game. It's like you see things, you hear things. It's up in front of you the way that it wouldn't be if you're at home watching on TV, or it wouldn't be if you're, sitting up in the box or anything like that. But I think, maybe something from this particular game that jumped out was just it's loud. Like players are hitting each other loud. The defense was closing quick. I mean, they're chirping at each other. They're knocking people over. They're hitting the ground hard. And so you notice those things, and you can hear that stuff when you go and you watch your stuff back. But that was a couple of the biggest things, at least, for me from this particular game, was just how hard the defense was hitting. It felt like, at least, the defensive front, at least on the line, it felt like they were, one, getting around quick, and two, they just, when they were, it was, they were hitting people hard, and you can hear all that going on down there.
Brian, building off that, K-State owned the line of scrimmage. I noticed on K-State's first drive, Arizona did a nice job moving the ball, but I don't think they were blowing K-State off the ball. But K-State sure as heck was blowing Arizona off the ball. Taylor Portier just shoved his poor defensive tackle into the end zone one time in a very disrespectful way. And I just thought K-State was fantastic. As she mentioned, they were the physical team in this contest.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, K-State they out-physical them. I had problems but just questioning Arizona being able to handle the type of physicality that Kansas State would bring to the table. I felt like that was going to be the difference in the game, and it was. K-State was just the more physical football team. After the first drive, what a lot of people aren't necessarily saying, we stopped them from running the football. That's what got their drive going and what opened up the passing game so much. Not that they couldn't pass, McMillan is going to do his thing, but they were able to run it. When they weren't able to run the football and got them in third and long situations, K-State stood up. And that was the big difference in the game. It's easier to convert 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 than it is 3rd and 7, and a lot of times on that first drive, it was short yardage situations and they were able to convert, but they stopped allowing them to run the football. They sealed the edge. They just controlled the line of scrimmage. And look, we can say whatever we want. They just dominated Arizona up front on both sides of the football, plain and simple. And if you do that, you're going to win football games. I don't care what the skill position players are doing. It doesn't matter. If you're dominating the line of scrimmage, then you're going to win the football game. A lot of them.
Cole, I'm going to let you take this one. The 3 transfers through 3 games, I guess I'm counting 3, Travis Bates and Jordan Riley, along with Dylan Edwards. They're all contributing. Bates is probably the quietest of the 3, but he's playing a significant role when they go to the 4-man front. And it's him, not Cheedy, that comes on the field most often.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. It says a lot about him. But again, K-State goes out. Dylan Edwards is a big name, but the other guys weren't. They just weren't. And they find players that can contribute to what they need, not necessarily all star power.
Well, and I don't even necessarily think that me rating the transfers is that important. I think if you just watch the games, you can tell who the coach is, how they kind of rate the transfers, and throw Easton Kilty into that mix at left tackle, along with Gilbert's favorite player, Dante Cephas. And all of a sudden, you're looking at a group that maybe not underperforming, but maybe not performing at the highest level you would hope. I think Jordan Riley has been outstanding. He's maybe not that lockdown safety yet that we've kind of been accustomed to seeing with K-State when it comes to transfer portal guys. He's not Rush East. I know Julius Prince was a corner, but he's not at the same level as those kind of guys. But he is extremely capable, and he will start every single game the rest of the way because he is productive. I think sometimes the safety position, fans only notice it when you get an interception or when you really screw up big time. And I don't necessarily think he screwed up big time. There was a touchdown at Tulane, which he might have had a little brain cramp. But other than that, I think he's been pretty good. I think for what he is, Travis Bates has been very good. He provides pressure in the interior, which is something that K-State really needs. And then, of course, Dylan Edwards has been Dylan Edwards. So as a whole, I think the transfer class has been pretty productive. But again, they don't have to necessarily be world beaters because you have that depth. I mean, John Pastore came in and played significant snaps at the left tackle spot on Friday. So they don't need Easton Kilty to be Willie Roaf. They need him to be a capable offensive lineman. And if he's not, you have internal competition in John Pastore, who Easton Kilty will either get better or he will be replaced. And so when you have depth, that's kind of how it works.
I hope he's not Willie Roaf. He's a 40-year-old man who eats too much. I
have a picture with Willie Roaf, by the way.
Oh, that's got to be comical.
And you know what? He was eating salad.
See?
Yeah.
That kind of defeats my purpose. Hey, Big B, give me your offensive line evaluation. Speaking of Kilty, he hasn't been as good as I thought, but he's not been bad. And I think that kind of sums up the line. They're just getting it done right now.
Yeah, they're getting it done. I'd like to see more, but we could say that about everybody. At all times we want to see more. I think they're still fitting into, I guess the kind of a rotation or their roles on the team. But as of right now, look, they're running the football. And that's the thing, that when you're running the football, it's hard to say that the offensive line is playing bad and I don't think that's the case at all. I think they're just fine. There's things that clearly they need to clean up. I think they could be a little bit more physical at the point of attack, but other than that, I think the offensive line is playing very, very well. And again, they dominated against Arizona. They just dominated. I did not like the play against Tulane, but you could say that for the entire football team, although they did run the ball against Tulane pretty well. But I thought the offensive line just dominated the game moving forward. Just for the season, I think the offensive line they're doing all right. It's still early. Competition's going to get better. Competition's going to get more physical. But as far as against Arizona, yeah, they played well, very well.
Okay, Caroline and Gilbert. Whoops, wrong thing. It moved on me. There we go. So Finally Tuned actually has a question instead of making fun of Ryan Gilbert, which feel free to do, folks. With the new place, unusual kickoff time, altitude, all that, Coach talked about they're kind of adjusting for the altitude and the travel and the late game a little bit. Honestly, I can't remember anything he said about it because I apparently dozed off. I don't know. I remember the question. I don't remember anything. Could either one of you recap what he said?
Go ahead.
I remember him. I remember him saying that, it was last week we were talking about the humidity and the heat and all that stuff going to Tulane. And then now, you're talking about, okay, is it going to be cold? Is it going to, is the altitude going to affect people? He did say that with the game being late, maybe being a little cooler at night, it would be good for the offensive linemen. He said they probably love that. They're not, sweating like they were down in New Orleans. And that's the case, probably the same for everybody there. But I think for the most part, he said from a preparation standpoint, that little late kickoff maybe gives them a little more time, maybe too much time kind of during the day rather than waking up for an 11 a.m. one like you would. But he said, if anything, gives you a little bit more time to sort through stuff.
I seem to
See,
recall.
Vikings
Avery
fans have
saying
good
something about
memories. We learned that.
What was that?
Vikings fans have good memory. But I think it was Kellis, I think, asked what was like the plan until they go to the stadium, because they're going to have all day out there to do nothing. And I think Kleiman kind of gave us an answer without answering it. He kind of dodged the question. So we don't know what they're doing as far as like their whole day plan before the game. But yeah, he complimented his nutrition staff, strength conditioning, all that stuff. So he feels confident. And obviously I know like Cole kind of brought up, it's going to be probably somewhat of a challenge to manage that roster, keep your guys going and fresh. But with a roster that has so much depth from top to bottom at so many different position groups, shouldn't be that much of an issue, guys and girls.
And
well, the thing about the altitude thing, and sorry, Fitz, is, you know, with the whole altitude, you get tired in spurts. Like, it doesn't wear you down. Like, you're not going to be, oh, man, I'm out here in the first quarter and I'm gassed and I can't ever get my wind back. That's not what it does. It just, you get tired in spurts. I remember, now, granted, it was a long time ago, but the altitude is not any different. Playing in Colorado, one thing with this question is that it was late. I remember our kickoff in 98, it was 8 o'clock. And we were there, obviously, the night before, and we got up, you know, Coach Snyder, I mean, we walked around, we took a walk, we did this. He just wouldn't let us sit in our bed all day long. And I would guess the team's not just going to be laying in bed or going to one meeting and that's it all day long watching football. I would guess that's probably not going to be the case. But I wouldn't get too worried about the altitude. Yes, it's a real thing. Yes, you get tired. But it doesn't just wear you down for the entire football game and like, oh, man, I'm dead tired in the first quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, oh, man, no, that's not it. It'll wear you down during drives and stuff like that. But the guy, either you're in shape or you're not, they'll be able to figure that out.
Would you agree, Big B, that it would be more of the case of DJ Giddens breaks off a 65-yard run from his own 20, and then he has to come out of the game the next play because it takes him a play to catch his breath, instead of, hey, he's tired in the fourth quarter and he has to come out of the game?
1,000%. And the difference is that in Manhattan, if he does that, he comes out for a play. Here in altitude, he might come out for 4 plays. Mm-hmm. That's where the difference will be.
So this is something that is interesting. And again, I probably would have asked Coach Kleiman this question, but like, do you think, guys, that they might take a few extra guys on the travel squad because anticipating that factor? Because, hey, if somebody gets hurt, you know, maybe at certain positions, you want to go 3 deep instead of 2 deep, you know, for special teams wise, or, you know, even at like a receiver spot. If a guy goes down, you want to make sure that you have an extra guy or two just in case. With that altitude, I would be curious to see if their travel squad numbers are a little bit higher than they had against Tulane.
Well, you're obligated, or you're limited to, I think, 85 players on the road in the Big 12, except for one game you can take the squad. You can take the whole team. So you bring up a good point. Do they do it for this game? They've got 2 other games coming up at altitude, Boulder and Morgantown, back to back. Do you save it for Boulder because, you know, more parents can go to that game? And honestly, by the fourth quarter, a lot of those kids could get on the field against Colorado. But yeah, that's very interesting. Gills, here's one for you. I want you to dip into. Where's it at? Right here. Kansas John 12. Should we be concerned about the lack of production from the wide receivers? No touchdowns yet. Dante Cephas has dropped balls like girlfriends dropped me in college. I went a long ways for that one, and it didn't really work, but I stuck with it, and I'm proud of myself for seeing it through. Give me your thoughts on the receivers.
Real quick, I believe the last time K-State played any sort of major sporting event, let alone any sporting event in Utah, was the Elite Eight Sweet 16 games in 2010, and we saw how, you know, guys were cramping, you know, going to double overtime, and the fatigue that set in, especially against Butler in the Elite Eight. Like, it's a real thing. And obviously K-State's kind of been out there before and let the altitude maybe not get to them, but it certainly had an impact on how tired that team was. But yeah, I mean, glass half full with the wideouts. I think you look at what Dylan Edwards, DJ Giddens, and surprisingly, Will Swanson and Braden Lofton have done as well at the tight end spot. So if you want to be optimistic, maybe those other guys have stepped up. Avery Johnson's talked about he's not necessarily looking for those tight ends. They're just kind of open and it's there, and he's making that connection. And so, I think we, cannot at all hit the panic button on a guy like Keegan Johnson or Jace Brown. They haven't played bad. They haven't played exceptionally great, but hasn't been bad. Now, Cephas might be a different story. Him and Avery Johnson are just not on the same page. But, Sterling Lockett, right? Trey Spivey, I'm not going to give up on, maybe some of those depth pieces, right? And maybe they pop up and have a breakout game. Maybe they pop up and have a breakout Big 12 conference play throughout the entirety of the rest of the season. Maybe they don't, but yeah, I don't know if hitting the panic button is the right way to word it, but it's not pointing in the right direction right now. So I think that this is a big opportunity for K-State's wideouts to kind of silence that criticism that's been thrown their way. And honestly, rightfully so. They haven't performed up to their standards.
I think you got to open the route tree up. If you open the route tree up and you throw the ball down the middle of the field to wide receivers, you also got to give them an opportunity.
Yep.
So while we talk about the wide receivers and their lack of production, if they're not getting the opportunities, and again, we throw it to them outside the numbers and on the hash, throw it to them in the middle of the field, run some shallow crossing routes, do some different things that we could do. Again, it comes back to, hey, 40 to 45% of the offense. Maybe there's more out there for the wide receivers to do, and we just haven't seen yet. But I agree. I don't think it's time to hit the panic button, but I do think it's time that we got to open it up and give guys more opportunities to catch the football in other places.
Guys, we've been having the same conversation with the wide receivers at K-State ever since I've been doing podcasts at Go Power Cat. I mean, Phillip Brooks, Malik Knowles. I remember, is Phillip Brooks and Malik, is that a good enough wide receiver duo to win K-State ball games? And you go back, is Cade Warner really a number one wide receiver? Like, we've had so many conversations throughout the last 5 years about the Kansas State wide receivers, and nothing has changed. I just think K-State likes to run the ball. Like, I mean, numbers, the production for wide receivers will be down if you run the ball successfully. The production for tight ends will probably be a little higher if you run the ball successfully, because everybody's going to anticipate them to block. So when they don't block, they're open, and then they throw them the ball. That's just how it works. And so, yeah, I agree with both of you guys. Like, let's open up the route tree. Let's see what these guys can do. But at the same time, if you run the ball successfully, then run the ball. I don't know.
The problem is when we can't run the ball and we have to throw it, that's when we run into problems. Look at Oklahoma State last year.
Yeah.
I mean, we couldn't run the football, and then what? And then we couldn't complete a pass when we needed to complete passes. I'm just saying, at some point, you have to have guys that you can count on, and it can't just be, hey, we're going to throw the ball to the outside the numbers and win. We didn't win the Big 12 championship game doing that. I know that we didn't win the Big 12 just throwing the ball outside the numbers. We use guys in different spots, and we weren't just always running the football. League's too good now. Things are too different. You just can't win that way anymore. It doesn't work that way.
Okay, so we bring this thing to a wrap here. Caroline, thanks for sticking around. I didn't know I was going to get you the full hour. You put in the work here.
I did. I ended up getting off earlier than I thought, so it wasn't
good.
a dinner break. I had the evening, so
nice.
we were good to go.
So after seeing K-State in person, how good is this team?
I think this team's ceiling is really, really high. I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be sorted out, cleaned up a little bit, but that comes with just about everybody when you're heading into game 4, So I think this team looks really good. The adjustment I saw from Tulane to Arizona, really just, okay, you know what? Figured out what you need to do. You adjust. It's a good football team. So I think the potential is there.
You can catch Caroline on Channel 27. And of course, K-Nation, their Sunday night show was my competition. Now I quit my shows, so they're not my competition, so I'll promote them.
Now you can be in studio.
You guys do a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gills, any final thoughts?
One thing I was just going to add real quick on Avery Johnson, with the wideouts, is that Avery Johnson has missed multiple wide open guys. Sterling Lockett against Tulane comes to mind. And so, wideouts haven't been perfect, but we're viewing them differently right now if Avery Johnson was more accurate than he has been.
True. Very true. Appreciate everyone watching, listening. The chat over there got very complimentary. I thank you very much, Mike, and of course, Finely Tuned, which is a great screen.
You know who Mike Epps is, by the way, Fitz?
Yeah, I do. Why?
Well, Mike Epps, the real Mike Epps, is in this chat right now.
I don't
The
know.
real Mike Epps.
I don't know.
You don't know who Mike Epps is? That's so
No.
sad. That's so
Okay.
sad. Oh, okay.
Okay, that's it. I'm kicking Cole off the show. There we go. We moved him, and that's it for the Insiders. I appreciate everyone watching. I thank you so much. Let me get over to my brand to do my thing, and we'll be back next week with another edition of the Insiders. I forgot to run the intro. I forgot to do a whole bunch of stuff on this thing. So be it.
This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.